Hello everybody and welcome back to our channel. So I suppose we should dive into this. So I walked into a spiritual store at the mall the other day and I saw something that actually made me pause for a second. Copper water bottles. Now I'm not talking about the health benefits because that's a separate conversation. Now what caught my attention was the spiritual claim behind them that copper can transfer energy, spiritual energy, emotional energy, and even spiritual presence between people. And I thought, if that were true, construction sites would be absolute chaos, and plumbers, they would be swapping personalities mid shift, and electricians would just absorb spiritual vibes every time they touched wiring. And hardware store workers would walk into aisle 7 and then come out spiritually confused. So today, we're not here to mock people, we're here to test a claim because discernment means we don't just believe something because it sounds mystical or reject something because it sounds weird. We gotta test everything. Now, let's be fair and honest first. The idea that metal carries energy didn't appear out of nowhere, because across history, some ancient cultures used metals symbolically in rituals, and certain traditional practices use copper containers for storing water. And some spiritual traditions believed physical objects could hold intention or spiritual influence also. And that doesn't automatically make those ideas evil or stupid, but it also doesn't automatically make them true. There's a huge difference between symbolism, tradition, and measurable spiritual reality. So humans naturally want physical objects to represent invisible things. And we keep photos of our loved ones, like we keep sentimental items from memories, like we attach meaning to physical things all the time. That's just human psychology, not supernatural energy transfer. Okay? Now, here's where things get interesting because copper is actually pretty amazing physically. It conducts electricity extremely well. It conducts heat extremely well also, and it is antimicrobial has micro sorry it has antimicrobial properties, meaning bacteria struggles to survive on copper surfaces, and that's just why some hospitals use copper materials. Now the human body needs tiny traces, like just tiny amounts of copper for immune function, nerve function, and blood cell formation. But here's the key line here, okay? You see, I just want to say that there is only zero scientific evidence, zero. There's none. That copper transfers personality and emotion and spiritual identity and souls and consciousness and or spiritual beings between people. All right, copper just transfers electrical charge, not spiritual essence. Now let's run a real world test. Okay, if copper transferred spiritual or emotional energy between people, the people who handled copper consistently would show consistent signs of identity swapping or personality blending. Well, you got to think about plumbers again, and electricians, and construction workers, and manufacturer workers, and hardware employees. Like they touch copper all day long. Some of these guys, and if spiritual energy transferred through contact, and these would be the most spiritually unstable professions on earth. But that's not what we see in reality. So either the claim in itself is is just overly exaggerated, or the claim is symbolic and quite misunderstood as literal. Good discernment will ask, if this belief were universally true, what would we expect to see in the real world? Now, this is the part that most people skip, all right? But it's honestly the most important too, because people aren't, well, let's just say people aren't stupid for being drawn to these ideas. There are real reasons. Like mystery just feels powerful. Physical objects just make invisible ideas just feel tangible, and expectations and the placebo effects too, because like that can create very real emotional experiences. And marketing just loves mystical language because it feels deep and it feels ancient and it feels like it's meaningful. Now, humans crave connection between the physical and the spiritual because that desire, let's face it, it's very real. But desire doesn't automatically equal truth, right? And throughout Scripture, objects do get used because there are staffs and altars and symbols and sacred spaces. But there's a consistent pattern. The power never comes, and I mean never comes from the object itself. The power comes directly from God acting through people. And there's actually a repeated warning pattern here, because like when humans start believing the object holds power, it becomes very spiritually dangerous. Very spiritually dangerous. Because biblical faith, right, consistently teaches that spiritual authority comes from a relationship, and only a relationship with God. Not materials, not metals, not objects, right? Just with God. Now let me be absolutely clear about something important, okay? Demons can dwell in objects. Like they have dwelled inside statues for centuries. Scripture shows examples, right, of Yeshua and casting them in pigs. Like pigs had demons, right? Saint Nicholas is recorded as commanding demons out of statues. This isn't fiction. Like this is spiritual reality. People in New Age practices, witchcraft, occult systems can and do place entities inside materials, and they give people certain items specifically so those people can be oppressed and then just lose everything spiritually. And they say they say it's a way to stay safe, but that's really a lie. It's really quite the opposite. Demons can dwell in statues. They can dwell in stuffed animals, talismans, crystals, jewelry, and even things in churches also too, right? Like statues of Mary or something, or crosses, right, that are used as talisman instead of symbols or whatever, right? Like they can dwell in almost anything when invited through spiritual practices that open the doors. Now, here's what you really need to understand. Not every object is demonized, okay? But objects can be when people invite spiritual influence through them. And that's why discernment really matters. And that's why we test everything. And that's why we ask God to reveal the truth to us. Like, face it, people who tell you to put your faith in like stuffed animals and statues and talismans and crystals and copper objects, or even religious symbols like the crosses and the rosaries as objects of power, these people can be manipulators. Okay? They're manipulators, really. They're most likely gaslighting you, and they're lying to you, and they're going to hurt you spiritually. Beware of people like this. They can come to you as a friend. They can come as a mentor. They can appear polished and trustworthy, but that's just how Satan likes to operate, right? He comes as an angel of light to deceive. Now, watch out for those who are around you. People you think that are your friend might be working together, preying on individuals such as yourself, and leading you or people that you know into spiritual bondage through objects and practices. So I'm just saying, just test everything and stay vigilant. And if you know somebody is going through this, tell them the truth, you know? A real friend carves up somebody up front, a fake one stabs him in the back. And if the truth makes you their enemy, well then, so be it. Whatever is done in the darkness will be brought to the light eventually. Now here's where maturity matters. Okay, there are two unhealthy extremes people fall into. Extreme 1, believing every object holds spiritual power, and extreme 2, believing spiritual influence doesn't exist at all. And healthy discernment stands like in the middle, and it says not everything mystical is meaningful, not everything physical is spiritual, and fear is just as dangerous as being naive. If your faith makes you terrified of like everyday objects, that itself is not freedom. That is bondage. Real spiritual authority produces peace and clarity and stability. So do not be afraid. And ask God to reveal the truth. If something is an idol, right? Ask Him, is this an idol? Or taking anything away from worshiping Him, really, and putting your trust in Him, right? If so, destroy it. Okay? Destroy it. Do not give it away. Do not give it to nobody. Don't even pawn it. Don't throw it in the trash. Just destroy it. Burn it if you have to. Rip it up. Do what you got to do with it. Destroy it, okay? But do not live in fear. Now remember, do not be afraid appears about 365 times in the Bible. That's one do not be afraid for each day of the year. So don't be afraid. Now let me share a powerful metaphor here, okay, that illustrates the difference between how evil operates and how God relates to us, right? I want you to think about a chess game for a moment. The board has black and white squares symbolizing duality, light versus darkness, and the battle between opposing forces. People throughout history have used chess as a metaphor for spiritual warfare and strategic thinking and life consequences. Like evil treats people like chess pieces, okay? It manipulates, it sacrifices people for advantage, it exploits weakness, it operates strategically and deceptively in chess, right? Pieces don't choose their moves. They are controlled by the player. History shows us examples of this, right? Pope Alexander VI, for instance, right, is widely documented as someone who treated people like chess pieces, forming alliances when useful and breaking them when the power shifted, using religion and politics together to maintain control. He is not unique in history, but powerful figures across cultures just they've operated this way. So just letting you know, there are people who claim spiritual, but they played this game. You know, God, He treats people like family. Like family. He protects, He redeems, He values each person individually. He invites partnership rather than forced movement. And throughout Scripture, we see a consistent theme here too, because humans have moral agency. Like they make real choices. They are invited to relationship. They are not controlled like objects. Here's the powerful contrast. Like in chess, pieces get sacrificed for the king. And in Christian theology, right, that the king sacrifices himself for the people. Like the reversal's pretty much everything. Like evil treats people like pieces on a board, but God treats people like children at a table, right? Objects carry meaning. Chess pieces symbolize roles, strategies, transformation, but meaning isn't the same thing as power. Symbolism can be a helpful metaphor, but we must never mistake some symbolic meaning for hidden mystical authority. So what should someone do with all of this, right? Well, we gotta test claims logically and study historical context and look at scientific evidence and examine spiritual fruit. And most importantly, don't outsource spiritual security to objects, right? Spiritual strength comes from truth, It comes from relationship with God and God only, and wisdom, not materials. Not materials. Now be careful who you put your trust in. I'm saying there are false teachers and false prophets in the world, right? Some are wolves in sheep's clothing seeking someone to devour. The enemy is like a roaring lion ready to attack anyone who isn't sober and vigilant. And when I say sober and vigilant, I don't mean avoiding alcohol and drugs. It's a mindset, a lifestyle, being aware of what you consume mentally, spiritually, emotionally. Because too much scrolling, or too much TV, or too much gaming, or even too much caffeine, like these things can make your mind restless and distracted. When your mind is overstimulated, it's easier to be deceived or spiritually attacked. Even when you work far too much, or if you're a workaholic, it's the same thing too. When you're in a burnout, same thing too. You could be deceived or spiritually attacked, right? The principle here is wisdom, sobriety, discernment, like guarding your heart, your mind, or your spirit, like staying alert to what you take in and who you trust. Because, well, we just got to stay sober and vigilant and test spirits behind everything. I mean, everything and everyone, and that's just how it is when we walk with discernment. And trust only the one who is truly powerful, God. Don't put your trust in man. Okay, God is the only one that is powerful. And if you think somebody else is powerful, you got to question that too. Where are they getting their power from? Because are they getting it from God, or are they getting it from the enemy, from the demons, from, the devil, whatever, right? You got to always make sure that they always point you back to God, and they never point you back to themselves, because that's like spiritually dangerous. Okay, if you have to go through a person in order to get to God, that right there is a cult. That right there is a scam. That right there is no good, and that's discernment right there. Watch out for people like that. You don't need anyone to stand in your way to get to God, man. We just got to walk the way Yeshua walked, and that's it. If someone says something is not good, don't practice it, okay? Whatever it is, just don't do it. God is the author and finisher of all things. Like, he is the ultimate creator, okay? You can't walk into his masterpiece and try to rewrite it to your own liking, right? Imagine telling Leonardo da Vinci, hey, Da Vinci, don't paint Mona Lisa like this. Make her look like a man instead. He just laugh and say, no. No, this is how I see it. This is the design, right? Like, that's exactly how it is with God, right? When he sets a boundary, or calls it something like not good, it's intentional. It's just part of his perfect design, right? Like, we can ask, we can inquire, sure, right? But we can seek wisdom. But at the end of the day, like, God is the author, man. We obey not out of fear, but rather out of respect and trust, right? Trust that his design is perfect. Trust that his plan is for our good, right? We can't bend his masterpiece to our will. We follow his design. And in doing so, we step into the freedom and clarity and purpose that he intended. Now, a lot of people, man, I'm serious, a lot of people can talk a big game all the time, right? Claim wisdom, claim authority, claim power, but only God is truly powerful, right? Talk is cheap. Don't put your trust in man. Don't put your trust in objects. And don't put your trust in someone's teaching without testing it. And I want you to test what I have to offer here too. You have to test the spirits behind everything, man. Things can appear happy, safe, and appealing on the surface, but when you have clarity, I mean true clarity, right? When you have clarity, when you have your eyes open, you will see the truth for what it really is. You will know people and teachings by their fruits. And when we try to warn people about that, it's not because we're jealous. It's not because we're insecure. It's just that we see them by their fruits. Some people can call themselves elders, teachers, prophets, or the wise, but remember, a lack of knowledge destroys people, right? Romans 10 from verse 2 to 3, zeal alone is not enough. Without truth, it can be misled. As scripture equips us for good works and righteous living, and everything that doesn't come from God, his word, his prophets, his spirit, should be tested. If it doesn't align, it's probably misleading at best. When you face eternity, you will give an account. I will too. And we can't say, well, someone told me to believe this, or someone told me to believe that. You are personally responsible for discernment. Whether if you do or do not believe in hell or heaven, you're personally responsible for discernment. Now, God will ask, why did you do this? Why did you trust this? Why did you follow this? Right? Don't let bitterness or manipulation or false authority play you like a dirty little pawn on someone else's chessboard. People who exploit trust, push superstition, or hide behind spiritual titles without accountability. So, really stay away from these people. Now, the reason why I'm bringing this copper, spiritual object, chess symbolism, and historical manipulation isn't to attack people or cultures or traditions. It's just to talk about one thing: discernment. Because history shows us something very consistent. Humans have always been drawn, again, to objects and symbols and systems that just feel mystical and powerful and protective, and we just naturally want something physical to hold on to when we're searching for spiritual security. But history also shows us that objects can be misunderstood and symbolism can be exaggerated, and sometimes people in positions of influence use spiritual language and symbols and authority to manipulate others, like pieces on a dirty little chessboard, like Alexander the Sixth over there, and so many other people who claim to be spiritual teachers and leaders and elders. That is not new. That's been happening for centuries. And that's why we have to test everything. When we talk about copper holding energy, or objects holding spirits, or symbolic systems controlling spiritual outcomes, we have to ask this truth. Is this symbolism? Is this tradition? Or is this something that could quietly shift where people place their trust? Because throughout Christian teaching, especially, in the life and message of the Messiah, there's a consistent pattern. Like, spiritual authority doesn't come from materials. It doesn't come from symbols. It doesn't come from talismans or rituals or even objects. It comes from truth and relationship with God and personal transformation. Like, objects can carry meaning, symbols can teach lessons, history can give warnings, but none of those things, and I mean none of those things, should replace where faith and trust and spiritual authority truly belong. The goal here isn't fear. The goal here isn't paranoia. The goal isn't mocking people. The goal is only clarity. Because when people stop examining what they're told spiritually, they become easier to influence and easier to manipulate and easier to lead away from truth without realizing it. So I'm just talking about these subjects because I believe spiritual maturity means asking questions, studying history, testing claims, making sure that our faith is rooted in something actually real and not just something that sounds mystical or feels powerful, right? And our hearts be so very far away, right? A lot of people speak of God on their have God on their lips, but their hearts are very far away, So gotta watch out for that. We gotta test everything. Hold on to truth, and don't hand our spiritual authority over to objects or symbols or even human power structures. Man, our responsibility is clear, and it's always been clear, to test everything, to know people by their fruits, to hold to God's truth and just walk in discernment. And that's how you avoid deception and walk in real freedom. Discernment isn't about mocking people. It's not about hurting people. Okay? It's about loving them and the truth enough to test everything. Because not everything mysterious is meaningful. Not everything ancient is accurate. And truth doesn't need exaggeration to stand. So, truly, stay curious, stay grounded, and really test everything. Test all things and hold fast what is good. 1 Thessalonians 5:21. And with that being said, y'all can go in peace, and peace be with you. Shalom.